So I'm going to turn it over to Mikayla, Cambria, and Meghan. Meghan, you're muted.
Thank you. My apologies. I wasn't having the slides did not show up the way I had expected. Apologies. We're just going to go with this because I know you're short on time.
Spotlight Meghan. This is the ASL interpreter. Can we spotlight Meghan? Is
Yes.
she coming
Yes,
on
give me
screen?
1 second. Not a problem.
Hello. Thank you all for having us tonight. We want to introduce you to some work that we're doing with Boston Public Schools, and that includes you as the families of Boston Public School students. We are co-designing a new tool for Boston families that we hope will be useful to everyone. To introduce ourselves, Pam Nurse is our executive director for the Federation for Children with Special Needs. She's not able to be with us tonight, but wanted us to make sure that we shared that our work, we work with districts, we work with parent groups like the Boston SpEdPAC to support them, to support families, and to support children. And that I wanted to make sure that you knew that we have a lot of one-on-one support available for families. If you've never called us, we have helplines to help you with IEP questions, 504 plan questions, school questions. If you have questions about vocational schools or charter schools, any of that, you can find us at fcsn.org. Also with us tonight is Cambria Russell. She's the director of the Massachusetts Statewide Family Engagement Center. And that group is the group that is the heart of what we do also, which is specifically Mikayla and I. We work in family engagement, which means we're always trying to bring districts and families and communities together, because when we do that, everyone benefits, especially our kids. So Mikayla is a family engagement associate. I'm a family partnership specialist. That means I work mostly with family groups. Our email addresses are here. We'll show them again at the end if you have any questions for us after tonight. We're available. So our agenda tonight is to talk to you about this collaboration between Boston Families of Students with Disabilities, also Boston Public Schools Office of Special Education, and the Federation with Children with Special Needs. We're going to define what co-design means in this space. We're going to describe the family-friendly guide that we're creating. And we have 3 co-design opportunities that we're going to share tonight. Specifically tonight, we're going to ask you to help us name this tool. We're going to take some ideas. We're not going to spend 20 minutes brainstorming it up, but we'll take ideas. And again, you can email us later. And then this month, we have a survey that's launching. It's about the content of the tool and the design, how it will actually look. And then in April, there'll be more conversations around those topics and the layout. And then we'll finish up by talking about next steps. So Cambria, if you wanted to talk about the collaboration a bit.
Sure. Could whoever's sharing, could you advance the slides?
Oh, it's.
Are you sharing, Meghan?
I am, but it was showing advancing on my screen. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So as Meghan said, this is a collaboration between Boston Public Schools, the Federation, and most importantly, you, families who live in Boston. And what we are aiming to create is a set of tools that will be added to the Special Education Policy and Procedure Manual. BPS recognizes that manual could be more family friendly. And so the Federation is working on tools to meet that goal. The tools will be written in family-friendly language, available in multiple forms, translated, and also accessible to those using assistive technology. And the way we are doing this is through a process called co-design. If you could advance to the next slide, thanks. So what we know from lots of research is that when families, schools, and communities work together, then students take off. Everyone benefits. We can accomplish more together than any of the groups can accomplish on their own. So these co-design is where we're going to take input from all of the groups at the beginning of the process and throughout the process. This is in contrast to a way things are done most usually, which is a district or an organization creates something and asks for feedback. Instead, we want to start with information from you and continue to go back to families throughout the process. So we are offering a few times that we'll be asking for your input on these tools.
Mikayla, I mean, oh, this is actually, I'm going to do the next one, aren't I? Okay, so this is the first co-design opportunity. And we're going to ask you to use the chat in whatever language you speak and communicate in. You don't have to translate to English. But if in the chat you could share, you know what, I did skip yours, Mikayla. How did we do that? I apologize. Mikayla is going to first describe the guide, and then I'm going to ask you for some naming ideas. We jumped a slide.
But you were so excited to present that I was just going to let you do it and we were going to jump back. So what is this family-friendly guide? What's in it? So this guide includes 3 things: fact sheets, videos, and an online learning module. And so the fact sheets each will explain a major topic covered in the BPS Policy and Procedures Manual. It will include a summary, some key facts, step-by-step guides, and links to relevant information, like links back to the manual. This is a way that you can read and look at the information. For the videos, there will be a corresponding video. There'll be a video for each fact sheet that we make. So that way that you can watch and listen to the content there too. And then at the end, we'll have an online learning module, which will interactively lead you through the topics included in the manual. This way you can read, look, watch, and listen. You will have many different ways to get the information that you want and the answers to your questions. And so now you have an opportunity for participating in our co-design, and I will hand it back to Meghan.
Thank you, Mikayla. Okay, so again, in the chat, in whatever language you use to communicate, if you have any suggestions for the name of this tool, of this guide, we're very interested, because FCSN has been using some language, Boston Public Schools has been using different language, and we'd like to hear if you have any ideas. This is going to take, just as a reminder, we're taking ideas from the Special Education Policy and Procedure Manual and pulling them out to make them more easier to use. So if you have any thoughts, you can pop those in the chat. And if not, I'd like to also ask, what search tool, what search words would you use if you went looking for this tool? Maybe think about what you would type into Google, and you could add that to the chats. And we're going to take these ideas back with us and use them to inform a further discussion, so that we're bringing your ideas to that table and you're with us. And then finally, the last question is, are there any words that you do not want us to use? Are there any things that would not be useful? Since it's not a replication of the manual, maybe we don't use manual, maybe there's something else. But if you have any thoughts, you can put them in the chat now or email us later. Second co-design opportunity we want to tell you about is what is happening this month and into next month. It's where we're going to be asking for feedback about content, the actual topics, and the design, how the layout will look. And it's a survey that we have created in all the languages that are represented tonight. It officially launches after February vacation, and it will be open for those 3 weeks till March 20th. It's completely anonymous unless you choose to add your name, and there's a space for that if you'd like. But what we'd ask everyone here tonight to do is to share the link that we're going to share with you in a moment with all the families you can think of who are not here tonight, because the more input we have from families, the better the results will be. That's how co-design works. So because you are here, you're going to be our first people to be able to give input. It's a soft launch. There might be a couple of words that we're still fixing in the translations, but everything is understandable at this point. We checked with native speakers. So we're going to put into the chat the link to the survey that you can take right after this session for the Boston SpEdPAC. Or you can use the QR code if you want to hold your phone up and have it ready to go for after this session. And then we also wanted to tell you what the next steps were so that you had an idea of what was happening, because it's important that families understand what's being created. So we're launching that survey after February vacation, although it's open to you now. The survey will close March 20th. We'll come back in the March meeting if we're invited to come back to the Boston SpEdPAC and give you an update on the survey results that we have. And then we'll take your feedback, incorporate all the information that we have, and start developing pages, the sheets that Mikayla described. And then the co-design opportunity in April will be some conversations with caregivers. We'll have some more in-depth discussions about the topics and the design, because by then we'll have more questions based on the first round of information. We'll incorporate that feedback, and then we'll develop the tool fully. And we'll return to Boston SpEdPAC again, hoping we're invited, to share those tools with all of you.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Megan. Oh, did you want?
Just one more thing, yes, before we jumped
Sure.
off, I just wanted to let you know about our vision. In my background, you can see that we have a Visions of Community conference that's coming up that is full of information for parents of students with special education, receiving special education services, or who have health conditions. The registration's open. There's a huge discount right now. It's usually $65 and it's only $15 this year because we did a celebration. But we wanted to make sure that you guys had that link as well. And then again, we have our email information, and I will let you, Edith, take over.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan and team. Appreciate the information. We're going to move on, and I want to thank everyone from the Office of Special Ed and from Central Office who are here today, our BPS staff. And we're going to move on to Dr. Lauren Viviani, who is the Interim Superintendent for Special Education, who is going to talk about special education therapeutic services that are offered in BPS, as well as programs for the next 10 minutes. Again, please pace for the interpreters. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll try to get to a couple of questions. We're going to have about 10 minutes for the presentation and Q&A. Dr. Viviani?
Thank you so much, Edith, and thank you so much for having us here today. It's my pleasure to come today, and we have hired a couple of consultants to help us make some programmatic improvements and support schools who have strands of sub-separate classes of kids with emotional impairments. And so it's really my honor. They're going to be doing most of the presentation because they're actually in the schools doing the work. And it's my honor and pleasure to introduce Kate Regal, who is a consultant from Walker Solutions. She's part of Walker Therapeutic and Educational Programs, and they have a continuum of behavioral health services, including therapeutic school and residential schools. And also Kate Tetuan, who worked at Wadiko. They've both supported schools across BPS, including at McKinley, and have studied under our next guest speaker, who you guys are really here to hear about. But as we roll out the kind of the district-wide or like the program-wide improvements or kind of ways of supporting kids with emotional impairments, we hope to continue to connect with Dr. Greene and Kate and all of BPS. So I will turn it over to Kate Regal.
Thank you. Thank you. And hi, everybody. It's nice to see so many people. I'm Kate Regal from Walker Solutions. And I was just going to spend a few minutes talking about the therapeutic supports available. We know that there are many reasons why students can struggle to be successful in school. And so looking to provide the right supports and services so that all students can be successful. And that is a wide range of supports that are flexible. And once an assessment of need is made and supporting the adults in the building, we know schools are seeing a lot of needs, some new and some certainly exacerbated by the pandemic. And all schools are working to assess and meet these needs. And this often involves partnerships and collaboration, and certainly a focus on relationships. But we know that relationships alone are not enough. And so support for the adults and also looking at all of the systems and practices that are being created and implemented so that students are successful across all schools. And it's obviously important that no matter what school a student is at, that they are supported and successful. And so we are working to share best practices, to collaborate across schools and within the district, and align these services as best we can, so that we can improve and increase the cohesiveness and the continuum of supports that are available. And like I said, to have that consistency throughout the district. So that was all we were going to present before passing it along to Dr. Greene. I'll also just introduce Kate Tetuan Parent, who's also here with me tonight.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I just kind of want to piggyback on what Kate said, and while I don't directly support some of the schools I have for the past 15 years, so I've been really trying to be thoughtful about how we can think about system-wide some consistent practices that can support the different adults so that they can support the students in these programs, and also be able to provide the clinical support that the staff that are providing clinical supports to our students, so that they feel like they have the tools that they might need to implement some of these strategies that are going to be introduced.
Thank you, Kate and Kate. There was one question in the chat, and I think this is for you, Dr. Viviani. Anne Marie was asking which schools currently offer collaborative and proactive solutions. I know that Dr. Greene is working in McKinley schools, otherwise known as the Melvin H. King Academies. Are there other schools that are currently using this approach?
No, not yet. We're looking to have additional supports in the collaborative problem solving as we work more closely and ongoing with Dr. Greene.
Okay, thank you. Someone is asking, what about the Henderson?
if they're using this approach. It's not to my knowledge, not yet.
All right, and at this point, I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions for Dr. Viviani. If you have a question, if you could just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask your question. If there are any questions for Dr. Viviani? Seeing no hands. Oh, I see a hand. Eunice, do you want to just unmute yourself? Okay, you have to be unmuted. Let's see. Yasi, can you help me unmute Eunice?
She's being asked to be unmuted.
Hello.
Great. Yes.
Hi,
Please
good
ask your
night, guys. I just had a question, I just want to ask because I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do to, solve some of the problems that I'm having, but the school is not helping at all. And I done spoke to supervisors, and the problem's still not changing. And my son is still not going to school, and the Henderson still suspending him without no evidence or even to show me evidence.
Okay, yeah, I will reach out. I'm gonna drop my email in the chat for you, and I will connect with the assistant director for the Henderson so we can do some problem solving together. I will definitely be in touch. If you want to also send me your information, I will definitely be in touch.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Eunice, for your question. We're going to move on to Dr. Greene. I'm going to introduce him and just tell you a little bit about his work. Dr. Greene is a clinical psychologist, and he's the author of several books. We did send a link out so you can see some of the books that he has authored. One of the books is Lost at School: Why Our Kids with Behavioral Challenges Are Falling Through the Cracks and How We Can Help Them. Dr. Greene has authored an evidence-based model of intervention, which is called Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, which focuses on collaborative problem solving. He has done transformative work in public schools such as Fairfax, Virginia, which has 180,000 students speaking over 200 languages, with 198 schools, as well as in the Bronx, which has 332 schools and over 188,000 students. He's currently working in Boston Public Schools with the Melvin H. King Academies, formerly known as the McKinley Schools. Now, Dr. Greene's work focuses on creating therapeutic school models for student success. And he has a nonprofit called Lives in the Balance, which advocates for the most vulnerable students and was pivotal in achieving the passage of statewide no seclusion and limited restraint legislation across the entire state of Maine. Alternatives that are used in the state to restraint and seclusion are things like building communities of care, nonviolent crisis intervention, and non-abusive psychological and physical intervention, just to name a few. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Ross Greene.
Edith, thank you very much for inviting me to do this. I'm very glad to be with you all tonight. I've been asked to talk about what therapeutic services are, and this does not mean what therapeutic services are in Boston Public Schools. You get my definition of therapeutic services tonight. And I have a certain way of thinking about these things. I must tell you that I've been spending a good part of my career trying to demystify what therapeutic means. I would happily substitute the word helper for therapeutic. And the nice thing about that is it greatly broadens the array of people who can play that role. And I think we need to broaden the definition of who can play the role of helper, because especially post-pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, there were a lot of kids who needed help. And I'm not talking about academics here, that's a slightly different category. I'm talking about help with social, emotional, and behavioral challenges. So you may not hear me using the word therapeutic very much. You may hear me using the word helper, quite a bit. And what I rely on there is a vast literature on what it means to be a skilled helper. Huge literature telling us good ways to help and ways that are less productive to help. But what you'll be getting from me tonight is how the collaborative and proactive solutions model, formerly known as collaborative problem solving, helps kids, helps caregivers help kids, with a very broad definition of who can do this. Educators are in one of the helping professions. Mental health professionals are in one of the helping professions. Parents are in one of the helping professions. So, you know, in thinking about this brief talk that I'm doing here, I always like to ask the question, what would I look for? What would anybody look for in somebody who they were hoping could help them? And this is just me spitballing it in terms of what I'd be looking for. I'd be looking for an environment that is safe. I would be looking for a helper who I felt I could trust. I don't think there's going to be a lot of helping going on without those ingredients. I'd be looking for somebody who is empathic. And I should tell you right up front, I think listening is the purest form of empathy. I'd be looking for somebody who is collaborative, meaning somebody who was working with me instead of just telling me what to do. I'd be looking for somebody who felt that my voice was valuable, that I'm one of the best experts on myself. I'd be looking for this to be a partnership between me and the person who was trying to help me. I would hope that the person who was trying to help me recognized that most good help is provided proactively, not in the heat of the moment. And the reason that's really important is because a lot of the help that often gets delivered is delivered once a kid is already becoming escalated, once they're already having difficulty meeting a particular expectation. I would want my helper to be optimistic about me, about the prospects for change, about what I'm capable of. I would want them to meet me where I'm at, not where they hoped I'd be at, not where other 65-year-olds are at. Oops, I just revealed too much. And I would want it to be culturally responsive. That's quite the list. I don't mean to make helping more difficult than it really is. You're going to see a lot of those ingredients in what I'm about to say. I find that helping requires a few paradigm shifts. Some of the things caregivers do in the name of helping isn't as helpful as their good intentions might suggest. And so let me give you the key ingredients, the key themes of the collaborative and proactive solutions model, and then we'll jump into some of the technicalities. And I'm going to try to do all of that in the next 25 minutes so that we have at least 15 minutes for questions. Here we go. One key theme of the collaborative and proactive solutions way of helping, and this is a very big paradigm shift for a lot of people, is that in the CPS model, we don't focus on a kid's concerning behavior. And we don't put effort into trying to modify a kid's concerning behavior. We are instead focused on the problems that are causing that behavior and solving them. So the primary role of a caregiver in the CPS model is problem solver, not behavior modifier. Now, that almost always prompts an immediate question, which goes something like this. How is the kid's behavior going to improve if we're not busy modifying it? Here's what the research tells us, and quite a bit of it has accumulated at this point. When you are solving problems with kids, especially if you're doing it in the way that I'm about to describe, their behavior improves every bit as much as it would have if all we were focused on was the kid's behavior. But, and this is a very big but, if all we're focused on is the kid's concerning behavior, the problems that are causing that behavior remain unsolved and often unidentified. So you might be wondering, what kind of problems are we talking about here? By the way, we call them unsolved problems. Any expectation a kid is having difficulty reliably meeting counts as an unsolved problem. Unsolved problems are also known as problems that have yet to be solved. They're also known as problems that are waiting to be solved. And there are a lot of kids whose problems are still waiting to be solved, often because those problems didn't get identified in the first place, often because us caregivers were too focused on the behaviors that were being caused by those problems. So let's come back down to earth here. What are some unsolved problems at home? We're not that picky. Any expectation the kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. Difficulty brushing teeth before going to bed at night. Difficulty getting off the Xbox to come in for dinner. Difficulty turning the electronics off to go to bed by 10 p.m. Difficulty going to school. Difficulty going to school on time. Difficulty coming in for curfew on time. I could go on forever. You get the basic idea. What might unsolved problems at school be? Difficulty completing the double-digit division problems on the worksheet in math. Difficulty getting along with Trevor on the school bus in the morning. Difficulty agreeing with Billy on the rules of the Foursquare game at recess. Difficulty coming back into the classroom after recess. Once again, I could go on forever. That's just a brief sampling of the universe of unsolved problems that kids often continue struggling with because the problems have remained unidentified and unsolved. So now, what is concerning behavior in this model? Well, we've all heard the cliche, behavior is communication. What is concerning behavior communicating? That there's an expectation a kid is having difficulty meeting. In that respect, concerning behavior is just the signal, just the fever. Now, I'd be the first to agree. Some of those concerning behaviors are scary, dangerous, potentially self-harming. But in terms of what concerning behavior communicates, it's the same. There's an expectation. A kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. Debating with myself on whether to cover lucky or unlucky, I'm going to. I have categorized concerning behaviors into two categories, lucky and unlucky. You're not going to find that in any research papers. And I'm the first to admit that those two categories are artificial, but I use them for a very important reason. What are lucky ways of communicating? That you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations. Just a sampling here once again. Whining, pouting, sulking, withdrawing, crying. Why are those ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations lucky? Those ways aren't going to get you popped into timeout. Not going to get you held in from recess, not going to get you held after school. Not going to get you grounded, not going to get you a detention, suspension, expulsion. Not going to get you a restraint or seclusion. Best of all, those lucky ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations are highly likely to elicit empathy, nurturance, support from your caregivers. Lucky you, kid. What are unlucky ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations? You already know. Here's a sampling. Screaming, swearing, hitting, spitting, kicking, biting, throwing, destroying, running. There's worse. Why are those ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations unlucky? At the mild end, those ways are going to get you popped into timeout, held in from recess, held after school. Now the behaviors are getting less mild. Detention, suspension, expulsion, restraint, seclusion, grounded. Even though the field of developmental psychopathology has been telling us for a very long time that whether your concerning behavior is lucky or unlucky, it is communicating the exact same thing. You're struggling, and there's an expectation you're having difficulty meeting. Those unlucky ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting expectations make things worse. Mostly because of what responses they elicit from us caregivers. Those unlucky kids get the most punitive, harsh, exclusionary discipline our society has to offer. What's the only difference between lucky and unlucky? How we treat them. As they are learning now at the Melvin H. King Academies, formerly known as the McKinley School, we use an instrument in the collaborative and proactive solutions model called the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems to help us identify a kid's unsolved problems, the information that's been missing. That's key theme number one. Here's key theme number two. Now that we are solving problems with kids, we need to think about what kind of problem solvers we want to be. A lot of adults tend to be real keen on problem solving of the unilateral kind. That's where the adult decides what the solution is and imposes it on the kid. It's also not what you're doing in this model. In this model, we operate on a very important recognition. You want to solve a problem with a kid? You're going to need a teammate. You're going to need a partner. Who's your partner? The kid. And by the way, generally speaking, the kid is going to be delighted to help you out. The kid's been wondering often for a very long time, how come we adults keep trying to make things better? Without the kid's involvement, without the kid's input, without the kid's ideas, without the kid's sign off. This is problem solving of the collaborative kind. It's something you're doing with the kid, not to the kid. Some of you are now wondering, what if the kid won't talk to you? Some of you are wondering, what if the kid can't talk? They are non-speaking. I'm here to tell you that we solve problems collaboratively all the time with kids who are reluctant talkers. We find that reluctant talkers will talk. When we finally stop talking with them about their concerning behavior, which simply causes them to think they're in trouble, become defensive and stop talking, and start talking with them about things they've been struggling with for a very long time. And people solve problems collaboratively with non-speaking kids all the time. It's not that the kid can't communicate, it's that the kid isn't communicating through our preferred modality, the spoken word, but there's all kinds of assistive technologies these days, apps that help us communicate with non-speaking kids about lots of different things. All of those technologies can be used in the service of helping kids participate in the process of solving the problems that are affecting their lives. In this model, you got a teammate, the kid. Key theme number 3 is a big one. Not only is the problem solving collaborative, it's proactive. This is not a what do we do when we find ourselves in the heat of the moment model. This is a how do we solve problems proactively so we don't find ourselves in the heat of the moment in the first place model. 99.9% of what you're doing in this model is planned, proactive. We are very good at getting people out of the heat of the moment. Getting people out of the heat of the moment means answering 2 questions about each kid we're trying to help. Why and when? As in, why do some kids respond so poorly to problems and frustrations? Why is this kid responding so poorly to problems and frustrations? When do kids exhibit concerning behavior? When is this kid exhibiting concerning behavior? Very quickly, the answer to the question why has been provided to us by the research that has accumulated over the last 40 to 50 years on kids with concerning behaviors. And that research can be summarized in one sentence. 40 to 50 years of research in one sentence. Why do some kids respond so poorly to problems and frustrations? Because they're lacking the skills to respond more adaptively. Skills like flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance, problem solving, emotion regulation. That assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems that I talked about a few minutes ago, it's going to help us figure out what skills a kid is lacking, so that we can make sure we have the right lenses on lagging skills, not lagging motivation. When do kids exhibit concerning behavior? As we have already established, when they're having difficulty meeting certain expectations. Thank goodness. The assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems is also going to help us figure out what a kid's unsolved problems are, and then we'll know what problems have accumulated over time that never got solved because us adults were too focused on the kids' concerning behaviors that were being caused by those unsolved problems. This model helps you get out in front of it. Once you identify a kid's lagging skills and unsolved problems, intervention can be almost exclusively proactive. Like I said, we're going to get you out of the heat of the moment. Heat of the moment is not ideal timing for being therapeutic. It's not ideal timing for being helpful. Paradigm shifting component number 4 is a big one. It's the mentality of the model. 6 little words that, you know, I get to travel all over the world talking about this model. And yet, how ecstatic am I to be working with Boston Public Schools? Very ecstatic. Yeah, doing this in Sweden is wonderful. Australia is wonderful. Let's make it happen in Boston too. These 6 little words people tell me all over the world are what really got their heads turned around. Kids do well if they can. The belief that if this kid could do well, this kid would do well. And that if this kid isn't doing well, something must be getting in the kid's way. What's getting in the kid's way? What the research tells us is getting in the kid's way. Lagging skills, unsolved problems. The reason kids do all if they can is earth-shattering for a lot of people, is because of a different mentality that has been very popular for a very long time, called kids do well if they wanna. Two completely different mentalities. One is going to make you work very hard at making a kid wanna do well. That's not what we do in the CPS model. That's consequences. In this model, we're trying to figure out what's making it hard for a kid to do well, what's getting in the way of a kid meeting certain expectations, and our primary source of information on what's getting in the kid's way is the kid. So there are things we do not say in this model because they flow from a kids do all if they want a mentality. These are things we've been saying for a very long time about why kids aren't doing well. They're seeking attention by doing poorly. They're manipulating us by doing poorly. They're coercing us into capitulating to their wishes by doing poorly. They're unmotivated. They're testing limits. These are characterizations that have never served us or the kids we're trying to help well. And these are terms we do not use in the CPS model. Finally, doing well is preferable. Key theme number 5. For me, a statement of the obvious. Of course, doing well is preferable. A preference for doing well is why most of us do well most of the time. We prefer it. So do kids with concerning behaviors. Kids with concerning behaviors prefer doing well too. The difference between a well-behaved kid and a kid with concerning behaviors is not that the well-behaved kid prefers doing well and the kid with concerning behaviors doesn't. That is incorrect. It's that the well-behaved kid has skills that the kid with concerning behaviors is lacking. Flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance, problem solving, emotion regulation. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit here. I'm going to skip this slide because you've already heard about the global skills that these kids are lacking. I'm going to focus on this slide. What are the 2 primary roles that a helper can play in the life of a kid who's struggling? And this is not only the role that is played by people who have the official title of being the therapist or the person who's supposed to be therapeutic. Anyone can do this. First, identify the kid's lagging skills and unsolved problems. Then start solving problems collaboratively and proactively. Now, why are we identifying the kids' lagging skills and unsolved problems? Because that's what's going to make intervention proactive rather than reactive. Why again are we identifying the kids' lagging skills? Because that's going to help us view kids through much more compassionate, much more accurate, much more productive lenses. Why are we identifying unsolved problems? Because it's going to help us focus on the problems that are causing concerning behaviors rather than on the behaviors themselves. Why are we solving problems collaboratively and proactively? Because that's what promotes a problem-solving partnership between us caregivers and these kids we're trying to help. Because that's what's going to engage kids in solving the problems that affect their lives. I'm always asking people, why would you want to leave the kid out of the loop on that? Because that's what's going to help us together come up with solutions that tend to be a whole lot more effective and a whole lot more durable, because then us caregivers aren't flying solo. And perhaps best of all, when you are solving problems collaboratively and proactively, you're not just solving problems, which is a very big deal all by itself. You're not just improving the kid's behaviors, which is a very big deal all by itself. You're not just improving your relationship with the kid. You're not just improving communication with the kid. Big deals. You are simultaneously modeling, giving kids opportunity for practice, and enhancing the very skills they are lacking. Now, if we had a little bit more time, and it's okay that we don't, I would be walking you through the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. What I'm going to tell you to do instead is hop on the Lives in the Balance website. I'll give you that web address at the end. Go to the guided tour, and you will find a 30-minute instructional video. All the resources on the Lives in the Balance website are free. You will find a 30-minute instructional video on how to use this assessment tool. Parents use this, educators use this, staff in treatment facilities use this. It gives them the information that's been missing. What are this kid's lagging skills? What are this kid's unsolved problems? But what I want to spend my last few minutes on here is your options for how to solve those problems that you've identified and how to do one of them in particular. What I've done here is I've taken the many different ways in which adults try to handle problems with kids, and I've reduced them to 3 basic options: A, B, and C. This is very nice shorthand for thinking about how you're trying to deal with a problem now and how you might want to be dealing with it instead. Plan A is where you're solving a problem unilaterally. That's where the adult decides what the solution is and imposes it on the kid. It is often a very common cause of concerning behaviors. And we're trying to reduce concerning behaviors. So you are almost never using Plan A when you're implementing this model. It doesn't mean you're dropping all of your expectations. That's the first conclusion people come to when they hear that they're not going to be using Plan A very much in this model. No, you still have your expectations. If they're met, you're good to go. If they're unmet, imposing a solution, Plan A, probably isn't going to be your best bet. Plan B is where you're going to be solving the problem collaboratively. That's the one I'm going to spend a few more minutes on. And Plan C is where you are putting some expectations on hold, at least for now. Many people hear that and their first thought is giving in. No giving in the entire model. Giving up. No giving up in the entire model. Prioritizing. Actually, there is prioritizing in the model. There's an excellent chance, especially in kids who've been struggling for a very long time, that you're going to have many, many unsolved problems identified for a particular kid. You're not going to be able to solve them all at once. You're going to have to put some of them on hold, at least for now. Plan C is where you are putting a particular expectation on hold, at least for now. That actually turns out to be smart, because otherwise you end up trying to work on everything at once and ending up solving nothing at all. Boy, could I give you more details on Plan C, but in the interest of time, how do you solve a problem collaboratively? There are 3 steps, and yes, you can do this at home. And yes, we have people doing this in schools all the time. The 3 steps are called the empathy step, the define adult concern step, and the invitation step. Now, the names of the steps don't matter that much. The ingredients matter a lot. The empathy step. This is where you're gathering information from the kid about what's making it hard for them to meet a particular expectation. As I'm always telling caregivers, the empathy step is where we adults discover that what we thought was getting in the kid's way is not what's getting in the kid's way. The empathy step is where the kid has voice. The empathy step is where us caregivers finally come to an understanding of what's been getting in the kid's way for a very long time. The empathy step is where us caregivers model listening, the purest form of empathy, taking another person's perspective. All good. The define it all concern step. This is where we adults are entering our concerns into consideration. The exact same concern you might previously have tried to address through use of Plan A, you are now addressing through use of Plan B. Same concern, completely different approach to getting it addressed. The define it all concern step is where kids learn to listen, appreciate how their actions are affecting other people, take another person's perspective. Boy, this is all sounding very therapeutic. The invitation step. This is where kid and caregiver are collaborating on a solution, putting their heads together, but a solution that must meet two criteria. Got to be realistic. Both parties got to be able to do what they're agreeing to do. Got to be mutually satisfactory, meaning the solution truly has to address the concerns of both parties. Here's what I've been saying a lot lately. And not only my work with kids with concerning behaviors, but world history bears me out on it. If a solution is not realistic and mutually satisfactory, I promise you, this problem is still unsolved. And that's why the work that I've begun doing at the Melvin H. King Academies is going to involve input not only from Boston Public School leadership, not only from school leadership, not only from the very dedicated staff who work in those buildings, but also from parents who really want to see the McKinley schools, the Melvin H. King Academies, I haven't quite got that rolling off my tongue yet, be a place that kids really want to go, be a place that really distinguishes itself, and be a place that kids show up to and thrive at. That's going to take all of us, including collaborative and proactive solutions. I am enjoying the work immensely so far. My sense is that I will enjoy it even more as we really sink our teeth into what we're trying to do. Now, I promised you the website. The one that you really want to pay attention to is livesinthebalance.org. You know, I should have told you in the beginning, people who listen to me for 35 or 40 minutes, generally speaking, have way more questions after I'm done speaking than they did before I started speaking. Fortunately, we've left some time for questions. Let's have at them.
So thank you so much, Dr. Greene. This was a very interesting and very informative discussion. The chat has been very lively. And if you do have a question, please feel free to raise your hand so that you can ask your question live. I'll start off with a question from the chat. It seems that we have some references to PBIS. And so folks are curious in terms of how does this align with PBIS? How is it different? Some folks are saying that PBIS is used in the district, and that's obviously not your program, but if you could speak to any kind of comparisons that you're aware of. If not, we can go on to another question, but that was one of the questions that was asked.
Yeah, I can't speak to the degree to which PBIS is being used in the Boston Public Schools because I don't know. so I don't tend to answer questions that I don't know, but I can tell you in general terms, some similarities and differences between PBIS and CPS. The technically, and it doesn't usually pan out this way, PBIS is a structure. It is a tiered structure, TIERED structure, aimed at organizing services that we provide to kids, all kids in the beginning, and then kids who have not benefited maximally from what we provide to all kids in the beginning after that. So it's mostly an organizational structure, and lots of schools have implemented CPS within the organizational structure of PBIS. So no incompatibility there. When there is incompatibility, it's because of the B word in PBIS, behavior. In a lot of schools, implementation of PBIS hasn't really fundamentally changed the focus on behavior. And now you've heard from me, CPS doesn't focus on a kid's concern and behavior, and it doesn't focus on modifying it. It doesn't focus on rewarding it. It doesn't focus on punishing it. That's not what you're doing in the CPS model, because none of that is going to solve any of the problems that are causing those behaviors in the first place. So where CPS and PBIS can part ways is in what we're focused on, and therefore what intervention looks like. Without going into any further detail, we should probably leave it at that.
Thank you, Dr. Greene. There is a question, Bebelham, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly, has their hand up. If you could unmute yourself, or if Yashi, you could help me with the unmuting so Bebelham can ask the question.
Okay, so I have a question. You discussed apps and technology that help with resolving issues in a therapeutic way with a child that struggles with language or doesn't speak at all.
Yes.
What are some of those apps or devices? I would be more interested in knowing.
One of the more familiar ones is called Proloquo to Go. But there are all kinds of tablets. If you Google apps to help non-speaking kids communicate, you will come across quite a universe of technologies that are out there. I don't necessarily have them all committed to memory. I've just seen them used extremely productively in helping kids who are non-speaking communicate with a speaking world.
Thank you, Dr. Greene. And we do have that app in BPS, so that app is being used. Another question from the chat is, are the unsolved problems essentially from lagging social and emotional skills, or is there more to it?
There can be more to it. Here's what the lagging skills that we identify in the CPS model are those that are related to handling problems and frustrations adaptively. But there are all kinds of other lagging skills that could make it very difficult for a kid to read, do math, write, spell words, make friends, enter a group, start a conversation. I could go on forever. The skills we talk about in this model are the ones that are specifically related to handling problems and frustrations adaptively. But we don't even sort of pretend that that is the universe of skills that could be coming into play. But here's the interesting thing. Do you want to know when you'll find out what's making it hard for a kid to meet a particular expectation? When you ask. That's when you find out what's getting in the kid's way. So I actually don't feel need to explain what's making it hard for a kid to meet a particular expectation. I know a lot of adults feel a great deal of pressure. We're the ones who are supposed to know. We're the ones who are supposed to explain it. Not only that, we're the ones who are supposed to come up with the great solution for how to fix the thing we actually don't know that much about yet. I would rather spend my time helping adults get good at finding out than at helping adults get good at figuring it out all on their own. I quite frankly don't think it can be done.
Well said. Thank you, Dr. Greene. Anne Marie, you have your hand up. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Yeah, hello, Dr. Greene.
Hi, Anne Marie.
So excited to hear you speak here. I just have this suggestion, speaking of apps. So I really love your approach to problem solving behavioral issues. And my problem as a parent is that in the heat of the moment, all this information goes out the window in my head. And I also have my own emotional regulation issues. And I just thought it would be awesome. So I'm putting it there out for you to consider, to create an app for parents where they'll have it so that when they're encountering something that's very frustrating, they can follow some sort of guide that'll help them through that in the heat of the moment.
Anne Marie, your ship has come in. If you hop on the Lives in the Balance website, you will find something called the Lens Changer app. It is precisely what you're describing. And now a caveat. I want to get you out of the heat of the moment. I'd actually prefer that you not use the Lens Changer app in the heat of the moment. I'd prefer that you use the Lens Changer app to memorialize all of the expectations the child you're thinking about right now is having difficulty meeting, proactively identify them, and proactively start either solving them, those are your high priorities, or putting them on hold, those are your lower priority unsolved problems. Because as you have just told us very clearly, this isn't going to be so easy if you're waiting until it gets hot before you try to do it. So let's do everything we can to get you out of the heat of the moment. I don't have great advice for what to do in the heat of the moment. You know, it's the same advice from everybody. My advice doesn't differ. I just don't want people using this advice very often. Defuse, de-escalate, keep everybody safe. But your opportune time for solving problems so that you don't find yourself in the heat of the moment is before you find yourself in the heat of the moment in the first place. So use the Lens Changer app in the service of being proactive. It's still there if you need it, should you find yourself in the heat of the moment and surprised that you're in the heat of the moment. But if you're identifying and solving problems proactively, you shouldn't be finding yourself in the heat of the moment very often, because there should be very few surprises left.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Greene. And this session is being recorded, so you can come back and view it. Maybe we should stop screen sharing, and I'm going to go to, I thought I saw Melissa's hand up. Melissa, if you could unmute and ask your question.
I think I did. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't catch the name of the person who just spoke about themselves as a parent, and that just really hit home for me. I work for BPS. I'm a clinician, and I've been in that role for over 10 years, and I was a special education teacher before that. I've been in BPS for over 20 years. I have 3 of my own children, 2 of whom are BPS students. And even with all of my clinical knowledge and experience and day in and day out, when it comes to my own kids, I still find myself even getting in the heat of the moment. So don't beat yourself up, because this isn't easy stuff to do. It can be easy. It can be easier when you're doing it professionally, but when it's your child, it's a whole different thing. So keep at it. And I'm gonna check the app out too. Thank you, Dr. Greene.
You
I
bet.
loved hearing you speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Greene, thank you, Melissa. Some parents are asking, how can we get BPS to advocate for this program in schools? And can you talk about what it looks like, not just at the high school level, but district-wide in your work that you've done with other districts? How have you started it and scaled it? And what is the difference at different levels?
Well, I love the idea of this becoming more widespread in Boston public schools. I think it would help a lot of kids. I do tend to start small, find that if I try to start too big, it doesn't go as well because we're trying to teach too many people and help too many kids, which sounds strange coming out of the mouth of a helper who wants to help as many kids as possible. I just want it to go well. And so, yes, we are starting at the Melvin H. King Academies, and that's going to keep me busy for a little while. But then I'm hoping that it extends into other schools as we see what we are able to accomplish at the Melvin H. King Academies. I'm very optimistic about how this will go. I think this is a missing ingredient, and I'm really excited about the work. How long will it take? I don't know. But I'm very devoted to making it happen wherever Boston Public Schools wants it to happen. We just happen to be starting at the Melvin H. King Academies.
Great, thank you. Ishi, you're up next. If you could unmute and ask your question.
Yes, hello? Hello,
Yes.
Dr. Greene?
We can hear you.
Yes, actually I have this little problem that I'm having with my son. When he comes from school at time, I will ask him, do you want to eat mac and cheese or do you want pizza? And yeah, he won't say anything. He would just stand there and look at me. And then sometimes I would tell him, you either say, yes, I want pizza, or no, I don't want pizza. And then the next day when I asked him the same question, he would say, yes, no, yes, no. And then I'll say, no, I want you to say, yes, I want this, or no, I don't want this. And it's been a struggle how to fix that.
3 steps. First, we have to say what the unsolved problem is. And here's how I'd write it. Difficulty letting dad know whether or not you want to eat pizza when you get home from school. Your expectation is that he lets you know. Then all I got to do is put the word difficulty in front of it, and we have the expectation that he is having difficulty meeting. So first we have to word the unsolved problem well, and then we have to move on to the 3 steps. And the most important step here, as usual, is going to be the empathy step, where you learn from your son what's making it hard for him to let you know whether or not he wants pizza when he gets home from school. Right now, we're just at yes and no, and he's not doing it. What does that say to me? We're missing information. And here's what's interesting. I can take you no further than that. You've heard what the 3 steps are, but in the case of this particular situation, I can take you no further because I don't have the slightest idea what your son is going to say. I'm very curious because you know what? You want to know what unsolved problems intrigue me the most? The ones I've never heard before. And I got to tell you, you've hit the jackpot here. I have yet to encounter a kid upon getting home from school who, for whatever reason, wasn't able to let dad know whether or not he wanted to eat pizza when he got home. I am dying to know what's going on. We will only find out what's going on when we inquire. And that's the first step of Plan B.
Sounds like there's a body of information that needs to be uncovered in that one.
You got me super curious here. I could use my imagination, but my imagination wouldn't help us at all. There's only one person who can tell us, and that's the kid.
Yes, so I just want to be cognizant of the time. If it's okay, Dr. Greene, if we could keep going. We have a couple of hands up. Is that okay?
Let's keep going. I would probably do another 5 minutes or so.
Great, thank you. So Kathleen, you're up next, followed by Christy. Kathleen, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, yourself?
I could be better, to be honest with you. My son has been putting me through a loop. I've begun my own investigation, into the online world, and I've come upon, you probably heard of it, ODD.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're familiar with it?
Well,
That
people say
everything that
that's my expertise. It's oppositional defiant disorder. It doesn't have much meaning for me.
Yeah.
But keep going.
So as I was reading it, that named my son down to a T. It's problems we're suffering at home. It began with problems that, are now overlapping in school where I have DCF involved. And he's seeing counselors and psychologists at school, which is helping. It's helping me. But like he, for some reason, just does not want to go to school in the morning, and it's begun like this pattern, and this been going on for a while now. But I didn't know it was, a behavioral issue. I thought maybe he was getting bullied or something. However, the school did go the wrong way about calling DCF. They were supposed to use that as, the last means necessary. They didn't try to communicate with me at all, and they just kind of just went about their own thing. And the principal knows she's wrong in doing it. But now my question is, they're still in my life because at the time they came here, my son didn't have a bed in his room because he wasn't sleeping in there, for 1. 2, I didn't have the money, and 3, he has a big, AC unit that does the whole block on top of, his roof. And it scares me because they did a poor job in these housing places where it's falling apart at the seams. All of our houses are. And there's mold, which I think started this whole problem with speech delay. So my question to you is, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know what else to ask.
So I think this is a very complicated question. I just want to kind of preface it by saying there's a lot of stuff happening here. And although you're working with the whole team, it sounds like, and your son is having difficulty going to school. So while Dr. Greene doesn't know your particular circumstances, maybe a global question of, school phobia, not going to school or that sort of thing, but that it's hard because you already have a team working with you.
I feel like I have a team working against me is more like it. That's my problem. Until I got the psychologist, which I feel, like I said, is helping me, but that just happened. I feel like I've been, I don't know, just against, like, instead of being partnership with, I feel like I've been, I don't know.
Well, as Edith said, number 1, this sounds very hard.
Yes.
Number 2, it also sounds very complicated. So
Yes.
Whether I can speak to everything you're talking about, I can't without knowing your situation better. The part that I can speak best to in a very complicated situation is oppositional defiant disorder, as far as I'm concerned, is a label. And good for you for finding that label. And good for you for looking at the diagnostic criteria, which is, as you've probably noticed, a bunch of behaviors. Your kid isn't exhibiting those behaviors because he has oppositional defiant disorder. Your kid is being called oppositional defiant disorder purely because he's exhibiting those behaviors. And as you've now heard from me, those behaviors are simply the way that your son is communicating that there are expectations he's having difficulty meeting. So I know that you've got a lot going on, and this is much more complicated than my answer will provide help on. I would worry less about the label. As you've heard me saying, I would worry less about the behavior. And I would worry mostly about the specific expectations that are causing your son to exhibit those behaviors. Here's supposedly oppositional defiant disorder is my expertise. I've published papers on oppositional defiant disorder, so it makes that my expertise. I couldn't care less about being an expert in oppositional defiant disorder because for me, It's a label that simply tells us what behaviors your kid is exhibiting when he's having difficulty meeting expectations. But here's what you've probably also noticed. Your son doesn't have oppositional defiant disorder full-time. He only has oppositional defiant disorder part-time. He only has looks like he has oppositional defiant disorder when he's having trouble meeting certain expectations. Is that really a disorder, or is that really more about the expectations your son is having difficulty meeting? So I'm hoping that the psychologist you've begun working with might be able to help you navigate and create a good team that you feel is working with you rather than against you. That's probably as far as I can take you.
And I would also say that we do have people from the Office of Special Ed, Chris Panarese, if perhaps you can get Kathleen's information and follow up with her. We also have SpEdPAC board members here that can get your information to support. So you have support both from the district and from the SpEdPAC, Kathleen. So if you could do that exchange, that would be great. We're going to try to take these 2 live questions, if that's okay. But before we do that, there were a lot of questions in terms of, would we be able to get the information that you presented for the parents to put up, for the parents to see your PowerPoint, if that's possible or not. And also, I think the other question was, let's see. Yeah, there was a question in the chat about getting access to the slides.
Delighted to provide the slides and delighted to turn people on to even more resources on the Lives in the Balance website that will take them well beyond what we have covered tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Greene. That was very generous of you. So we're going to end with Christy and Nikki's question. Christy, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question. And again, you know, while Dr. Greene is here to talk about his motto of CPS, we're not going to be able to get into real individual cases. But if you could ask your question, that would be great, Christy. Yeah.
All right. I purposely showed up late because if I started talking first, there wouldn't have been any meeting. So I purposely came late because I wanted to be like one of your last questions. I'm very upset with Boston Public Schools. Transportation. A lot of people keep talking about, you know, I'm sorry, I can't get your kid to school. This happened during COVID. My son he's autistic, but we don't say that word in our house. It's a superpower. And due to his superpower, he is way beyond. He was low functioning. And once I figured out that he was autistic, we both, the whole household, were autistic. So that being said, it's not a curse, everyone that's hearing me right now. So knowing that I'm asking them this question, I need you to hear that I'm asking this question for you as well. All right. So the first question is, if my son does not go to school for 3 days with no documentation, 2 days, DCF, and I heard this with a lot of parents that have been saying it, the acronym DCF keeps coming up. DCF is going to be in my life. DCF, I don't want to do this, DCF. But here's the thing, everyone that's listening, there's a time that you need to call on DCF. Even though they're going to be up in your business and do everything, we all have the same destination to make sure our children are okay. But my child is still not okay. And I decided to wait to this last moment and listen to everybody else to speak on everything that no one is saying. Why is my son not getting to school?
Christy, that's a really excellent question. I just want you to know that Dr. Greene does not work for BPS. And
no, I understand that.
So
I understand that because I listened to what he had to say. So it's not just that. I'm just starting with that. First thing is, why is my son not getting to school? And he is on the dean's list. Okay. And why is he still on the dean's list and he hasn't been to school for 29 days?
So Christy, you know, I'm going to offer you to either Chris Panarese is here to go in the breakout room, you can meet with her to discuss that. Because that sounds like a really pressing issue that you do need some immediate help with. Chris, would you be willing to meet with Christy to resolve that problem with transportation? And Yashi, if you could help with that breakout room arrangement, that would be wonderful. Because it sounds like something that you need to follow up. And Chris cannot unmute. Yashi, are you still on the call?
I'm still here. I'm still here. Give me
Yeah,
one
that would be
second.
awesome.
Bear with me.
Christy,
Okay, just
Christy,
give us
maybe if you
7
can
minutes.
exchange information, but if you could do a breakout room with the two, if you have time, that would be awesome. I just want to be cognizant, we're 15 minutes over. And I said that Nikki would be the last one. I see Kelsey, you have your hand up. If it's really quick, because Dr. Greene is being generous with his time, please ask a question that's related to his presentation. We're not going to be able to address BPS issues because Dr. Greene does not work for BPS. But if you have a question for Nikki, could you go ahead and ask your question? That would be great.
I have 2 things because I heard everybody talking about the fact that their kid doesn't want to participate or is lacking the, what was the words he used?
Emotional
skills,
lacking the ability to like do what it is he's required to do or she's required to do. My son, he's 14 now, and he has been doing the bare minimum only because he doesn't want to be given more work. And he has stated that, we've done the whole playful talking, when he's comfortable and ready to just hang out. And I've caught him saying these kind of things randomly where he's more focused on doing less because he doesn't want to do more, not that he can't do more. How do you attack that situation? Not attack it, but how do you maneuver that situation? Then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, here's the deal. This is what often happens when we don't know what's really getting in a kid's way. We get into can't versus won't debates. We wonder why a kid isn't going to school, even though they're on the dean's list. We wonder why a 14-year-old is doing the bare minimum. In my experience, that is often because the best source of information about all of that hasn't been consulted yet and hasn't helped us understand what's getting in their way. And so this might not be your specific situation. I don't know because we don't know each other. But if you ask me what's the most common reason we adults end up spinning our wheels and watching kids continue to do poorly, more poorly than we think they can, is because the kid has been left out of the loop on helping us understand what's getting in their way. And I spent my entire career and will continue to make sure that this continues to occur in Boston Public Schools. What I've been saying lately, this came to me on a podcast about 2 days ago, and I've been saying it ever since. We need to listen to the kid. We need to hear the kid. We need to engage the kid in solving the problems that are affecting their lives. So long as we adults are doing it mostly on our own, we got low odds. And that's probably the best I can say about a situation that I don't understand as well as I could if we had an hour to talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Greene. It is now almost 10 of 9. I want to thank everyone for staying on so late. I apologize if we did not get to your questions. We will download the chat and try to follow up with you. We do have Ann Chichella, who is here, Ann DeGeorge Chichella, who is here from Councilor Mejia's office. She's going to be helping out Christy with the transportation issues. These are really serious issues that we know we need to address in the district. And so I want to thank everyone for your questions. I want to thank Dr. Greene for the work he's doing. Is Lauren still on the call? Oh, I see Lauren is still on the call. I just want to ask a final question for Lauren. There was a question of, is this work going to be expanded beyond the McKinley schools? And can you give any information about that? So I wanted to get to that final question for Dr. Viviani.
Yeah, thanks, Edith. So as Dr. Greene and I actually have talked about how to do this, and as he mentioned, he's working right now at the milking academies. And so we are definitely trying to figure out, given, you know, all the capacity issues and how to do this, like logistically, but ideally we will be doing additional training for sure across the district.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all for staying. It's almost 9 o'clock. It's late. So we're going to bid you good night. This was wonderful. The questions were great. We hope to get back to you with a follow-up. And please pay attention to the next upcoming presentation. I know we're having something on dyslexia and learning disabilities, but we have monthly meetings and you'll get notices about it. So thank you everyone for your time and have a great night. Thank you again, Dr. Greene and Dr. Viviani. And thank you, Chris Paranese, for your help, and Yashi as well. Thank you, Chair Roxy Harvey, and all the SpEdPAC board members. I wish you a good night. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Edith.